Coming up, it's all the Brooklyn vibes that you want to have after a tumultuous trade deadline for the Nets fan base. They show up and show out at home, taking down the Chicago Bulls. We break down all the feels coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good? It's the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We dispense with the rest of the pleasantries around this episode. This is solely a YouTube live. Have the conversation in the comments. Dive right into it. This is all about having some good times after what was an absolutely brutal trade deadline for the Brooklyn Nets, for the fan base. No ad reads in this one. Just here to chop it up with you guys for a few minutes. After the Brooklyn Nets do the thing, gosh darn it, you really hope that they be capable of doing on a night like this. At home against the Chicago Bulls, a 116-105 victory for the Nets in a game, by the way, that they started out a little bit sluggish. So there's a lot of things, just a high-level takeaways here. Obviously, didn't have any Mikal Bridges in this one, didn't have Cam Johnson in this one, didn't have Nic Claxton in this one. But we can just get a little sample size of some of these players and how they function. Obviously, the return of Spencer Dinwiddie, the addition of Dorian Finney-Smith. And what does this team look like, right? I mean, listen, high level ball movement is right back into this team at a very significant level. And it needs to be because you don't have superstars at the top. So you need to be moving that ball, swinging it from side to side, finding open shooters. The perimeter looks weren't falling early, but they stuck with it. And frankly, you have to look at the defensive end of this floor and think about when you add the two-way talent like Mikal Bridges as well into the mix, when Claxton is back out there, they really are going to have an opportunity to be a defensive issue for a lot of teams. And you can buy into that. You can buy into that if you're a Brooklyn Nets fan and you're thinking about how can this team have some success? How can they find ways to grind out some victories and really stem the tide when some of those looks aren't going down? I'm going to jump right to the back end of this one real quick because I caught the post game on the court with Spencer Dinwiddie. They were about to interview him about this game and said, oh, looks like Cam Thomas decided to join this interview. Spencer Dinwiddie jumped in and said, no, I'm joining the Cam Thomas interview. Why do I bring it up? Because Spencer Dinwiddie knows exactly what he's here to do. He's a veteran player. He's experienced and he understands. Said it in his opening comments. Hey, when Cam Thomas is on a heater, get out of his way. Cam Thomas struggled in this game, but that's also why you have Spencer Dinwiddie. His defensive length and size, obviously. But when you go inside the numbers on Dinwiddie's game, let's start with him first. And if you have a comment, you want to shout it out at Locked On Nets in the comments, obviously, as we always like to do. There was a point in this game where Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Cam Thomas were a combined 11 of 33. Dinwiddie was struggling early in this game, only 2 of 7 from beyond the arc, but finished the game 8 of 17, gave you 39 minutes in this one, 7 of 9 at the line. He's a player that can get there. And I think really we talked about this with Nick Angstadt from Locked On Mavs. What's changed in Spencer Dinwiddie's game since he was last with the Brooklyn Nets? He's just become a more consistent shooter, and that really matters. One of the great reminders I got in this game was Spencer Dinwiddie. He can, with the ball in his hand, get downhill, use that baseline, attack at the basket, and his passing skills are on point. So it really is an important, I think, piece to bring into this team when you lose a ball handling talent like Kyrie Irving. We know the backcourt was thin. Spencer Dinwiddie can be the calming kind of force there, and he really did do a lot of that late in this one, including taking one just off the rip three that went down late shot clock and got the job done as well. So that's just high level on Spencer Dinwiddie. Then let's go ahead and sandwich the new players with some of the old faces. How about one Joseph Buckets? This game started out with Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, Day'Ron Sharpe in the absence of Nic Claxton, Dinwiddie and Cam Thomas in the backcourt. So your bench effectively became Joe Harris, Yuta Watanabe, Patty Mills, and Ben Simmons. And we're going to talk about Ben Simmons too. But when Joe Harris came in there, second quarter, had, I think, was it 5 triples in the four triples in the third quarter alone, second quarter alone, excuse me, goes 6 of 9, though, from beyond the arc. It was, it's the Undertaker from WWE just rising from the dead. And honestly, it's a one-off. We know can always get cold here with any of these guys, right? But a game like this reminds you that some of the things that we were seeing Joe Harris try to do more of, especially on the offensive end, exposes all the weaknesses in his game. He's not quick with the ball in his hands. He can't take guys off the dribble, but he can run laps around that court and get open for spot-up looks. And you saw a lot of great sequences where Spencer Dinwiddie was finding him, finding some great drop-off passes from Ben Simmons to set him up when he came into the game. Obviously, a really strong game for him. Yuta Watanabe. Guy comes in, ice in his veins, 22 minutes, 5 of 7 from the field, 4 of 5 from beyond the arc. Yes, the corner, the daggers. The one thing that we've said about him all season long is this is a guy that absolutely is not overwhelmed by the moment. Really great to see this on the court because remember, he was having a precautionary MRI in his back, and that's what they called it. It was just in case, just to be sure. So great to see him out there playing at a high level. When you look at I'm calling it quote bench because we know the rotations are going to be very fluid here, especially in the short term and maybe in the long term. Look inside these numbers. They went a combined 4 players deep on the bench, and you're talking about 18 made field goals from the field on, he's doing the quick math, folks, 25, 32, 18 of 32 for the bench. 2 players in double digits in Harris and Watanabe. Patty Mills had some run early in this one. Obviously, only 14 minutes, but still gave you 8 points. And then let's zero in on Ben Simmons here before we flip it back to that starting unit. And yes, talk about Day'Ron Sharpe, who had a big opportunity here with Nic Claxton out. We said, when we've been talking about rotations and what is this thing going to look like, maybe you just don't bother worrying about where Ben Simmons fits into it all, and you just treat him like a player. And Doug mentioned this on our trade deadline wrap-up. Maybe there's no more pressure now. Kevin Durant is gone. Kyrie Irving is gone. And now all of a sudden, there's an alleviation of, hey, what do I need to do here? Do I need to be the critical missing piece to a championship run for this team? Well, that's not the expectation anymore. So you can go out, you can play a little looser, play a little bit more free. And when you just look at, man, I said it over on Twitter, man, watch out, career Nets game coming for Ben Simmons. Maybe if he had played more, it would have been. And I think this was smart from Jacques Vaughn. 20 minutes, 4 of 7 attempts from the field there. Yes, he took a 3-pointer in this game. How about that? Had 8 rebounds to go along with his 4 assists. Listen, he's a massive minus in the plus minus. I think that one of the things they tried to do in that unit was just surround him with perimeter shooters for stretches that he was out there. So there's a little bit of fluidity in that as well. But you can take, again, you can at least take positive vibes off of what you got off of this team. And, they start out sluggish, and you can see everybody's kind of trying to find their way through this. And I don't just mean the players. I mean the entire arena. I mean the Nets fan base over on Twitter interacting with everybody. Where is this headed? What's going to happen here? And thankfully, the Brooklyn Nets started to find their rhythm, leaned into the perimeter shooting, and ultimately found their way back into this game. I want to make sure that I treat this the way I said. You got questions, you got comments, you can shout them out. Real quick on Al Mack, hamstring tightness, that's what held him out here. I don't think it's any concern for the Brooklyn Nets, probably precautionary, and maybe a little reward. That guy's been playing his butt off absolutely, right? Wire to wire throughout this entire season. So maybe you give him a little reprieve here before you go ahead and start to dial up the rest of these rotations. We'll get to Day'Ron Sharpe here in a second as well. Want to hit up Hector. Cam Thomas has to make better decisions. You can't always be an airhead. Yeah, listen, again, this is the value of having a Spencer Dinwiddie. When you don't have the superstars anymore, you still need veteran presence around Cam Thomas. But when we saw it, especially there, really for the most part, it's an off shooting night. I'm not going to knock him. He's been doing phenomenal, right? And you expect him to come down to earth a little bit. I wouldn't be shocked if he had just a little bit of the stars in his eyes around the fact that, hey, they're gone. It is me now. I can be the guy that steps in here. Just 3 of 16, 1 of 6 from the field. But guess what? You know why there's still value? Because he was 13 of 13 at the free throw line. This is a guy that can get into the paint, get into the lane, got it on the outside too on a couple of attempts, draw contact. He's a physical enough player to handle that load going into the lane and then still be productive. So it's really a good sign that even on an off shooting night for him, he can still be productive. Now in the fourth quarter, you cannot go into ISO ball, right? Especially when you see how well it's working when you're in the rhythm of the offense, rotating it side to side, allowing shooters to find open pockets. Those are the things that you really want to see more of from Cam. And by and large, he's been doing it. And again, I think Spencer Dinwiddie is going to be a really positive influence on Cam Thomas as he continues to go forward, becoming one of the leaders. It was brought up. He did speak at halftime of the last game in the locker room. Spencer Dinwiddie got up and spoke as well. So I do think that we're starting to see the evolution of who could be some of the leaders here going forward. Let's fire up Rico. What up, my man? Do you think Bridges and Cam Johnson would start? I believe, Bridges is going to start. Yes, Bridges is going to start. We talked about this before. Now, again, if you're going to look at this and say, well, Simmons is on the bench right now, I would say you could look, and Doug even mentioned this, like playing Bridges down a position. So if, say, Claxton's available tonight, you could see how would we maybe think? I'm trying to think about how we would, look at it. You could have a Dinwiddie, O'Neal can come out and go into the second unit. Johnson could be coming off the bench or inside this starting unit along with Bridges as well. I think, listen, I'll be really curious to see what happens going forward here, because maybe the Nets will unlock something in less is more for guys like Joe Harris and a guy like Yuta Watanabe, obviously, who always has been in the 18 to 22, 25 kind of minute range. Maybe with more ball movement and some more flexibility, Joe Harris can really thrive being able to come in and play off of some of these guys, knowing that you have so many players that can do some work on the defensive end and really eliminate that lift for him. So, Bridges is going to be, yes, I assume Bridges is going to start. Yes, we were debating who's the best player on this team now. We defaulted to Bridges. So he's going to be a starter here. And I kind of assume that Johnson will, but he just started games this year as a starter, coming back from his injury for Phoenix. So there's some flexibility there. Can be matchup dependent at times as well. Let's get back into the Day'Ron Sharpe, man. 28 minutes, 4 of 9, 12 rebounds, 1 assist. I threw that in for fun. We will touch on some assist numbers here too in a minute. 8 points for him. Listen, Day'Ron Sharpe is a player that we see get out over his skis sometimes, gets eaten up a little bit. He had a lot of productive plays, right? Did the short roll to the basket, had the feed out to the corner. I want to say to Yuta, could have been to Joe Harris, comes up with the block on the defensive end as well. You're starting to see him. He's growing. He's coming along. And I think we're starting to scratch the surface of saying this is a guy who you can give some consistent minutes to going forward and allow. We got 28 games, 27 games now, right? He can develop. He can grow. So it's good to see him get an opportunity with some difficult matchups in this game, right? Vucevic is a tough matchup, but it's a good one for him and what his skill set is. So I really liked that as well. Let's see what we got going on. What else we got going on here? Needs to start jacking up threes again. Yeah, the 3-point shooting for Day'Ron certainly is something that we'd like to see too. And again, go inside the numbers of this game, by the way, when we talk about the team stats. Again, they were struggling from the outside early. They end up cleaning it up. 17 of 44 from beyond the arc, 38% from deep there. Listen, when the Bulls are only knocking down 19% on 26 attempts, that's going to help you. The Nets only shot 43 from the field here, outproduced from 2-point range here. And actually, you know what? A stat that we've tracked for so long with the Brooklyn Nets, and it goes by the wayside in a lot of the post games, is number of shot attempts in a game. Historically, especially with superstars, the Nets have been outshot. So sometimes just the number of opportunities has often come down to bite you at the closing sequences. 91 on each side of the ledger here in this game. 84% at the line on 21 of 25. So there's a lot of things to like here. Even money on the defensive rebounds. Won the offensive by 3 here. So you win a rebounding battle against the Chicago Bulls when you don't even have Nic Claxton out there. Just 11 turnovers in this game too, right? So play smart, protect the basketball. There were a couple of minute and a half, 2-minute chunks, especially as you saw the pace of play looks even faster, even with these parts that are still trying to figure one another out. They really want to push the tempo there. Just need to make sure that you keep yourself under control. It's kind of like me right now doing this YouTube. I'm running at a nice pace here. I'm really pushing the tempo, but I also got to keep myself under control. Some really fun that we had here, as I will shout you out here again. Hector, what do you got going on? I don't see why Ben doesn't attempt jump shots. This is irrelevant, but last second shot was on the line, just a little short. Yeah, listen, it's all the evolution, right? It's okay. It's all the evolution for him. And I think Doug would probably hit on something when we talked earlier today that, listen, like the pressure's gone here, man. Slowly work on your game. Get yourself across the line, see if you can make some incremental improvements without the weight of saying, if you don't get to this point, then this team goes from being a deep playoff conference appearance to not making the finals or making the finals. That's a lot of weight for a guy that is still trying to figure things out. I like this one here. My heart sank when Ben took that 3 before the buzzer. It's all good, man. You want him taking those. You want him feeling comfortable enough to pull up on one. It's all right. Let's go back inside the stats here once again when we talk about the box score. Just to remind everybody, you look inside. We talk about assist numbers in this game. So Royce O'Neal, just 2 of 7. Bad shooting night for him. We know he has those in him, but turns up with 4 assists, 6 for Dinwiddie, 4 for Cam Thomas. And then go down into the bench unit. I think this is kind of important as well. And it's all based on the productivity of the guys around you. But Harris, Watanabe, and Mills, all with 2 assists over 20, 22, and 14 minutes. Ben Simmons, in just 20 minutes of action, 4 assists on the night, right? If you can extend him out to 25 and then to 30 minutes as he's coming back from a little mini injury, and he's going to have to manage that too. So you can see him. Like, this is actually probably something that we'll discuss more going forward. Don't forget that Ben Simmons maybe was some of what we've been talking about, the minutes, the workload, the injuries that have been kind of just keep creeping up around him. I'm going to take a look real quick here. When we go inside his game log, remember, you're seeing it kind of the up and down, right? So 27 minutes against Phoenix, 20 against Detroit, 29 against the 76ers, 29, 37 against Utah. But then he ended up running into a bit of a wall and having to take a step away, had the ankle where he stepped on someone there defensively too. Like, he averaged 28 minutes per game in January. I might not hate it if you bring him down by a few minutes, get him a little more under control, figure out how he's going to fit with everybody, and don't worry about saying you don't need to be anything more than what feels like is in your wheelhouse, and just have that incremental growth. So, dude, what an absolute what a great reset, right? What a great reset vibe that the Brooklyn Nets, after everything that went on from last Friday to 1 a.m. this morning, to be able to come out and to feel like, hey, this is a team that can go out and win basketball games. Chicago's been muddled this year. They're more talented than what their record has provided for them, but you went out and you got a win at home. That feels really good. Kashif Johnson, we have any numbers on Claxton's free throw shooting recently? I think you guys said he recently changed his shot. Yeah. So he didn't play tonight, and the last game that he was in, I think he cooled off a little bit. He changed it going back a ways. It's why you've seen a lot of lane violations off of him when it comes to his free throw shooting, because he's been doing a really long pause at the top of his release, and that's had a lot of guys stepping in early, which has led to him getting, 3 opportunities to make 2. If we go inside his game log here real quick, we can duck back into what has he been up to. So in his last 4 games that he played in, that accounts for all of February. He went just 1 of 2 in his last game, so only got there twice. But the 3 games prior, 5 of 8, 7 of 8, 3 of 4. He's shooting 73% from the line in the month of February. It's just 4 games, but that is a big step in the right direction. And if you go back to the month prior, he shot just 48%. 47 before that, 50% before that. So nothing was different. Nothing was changing. But if you go into, basically, you can even kind of look. It was a rough game against Golden State when he got there 15 times when they were abusing him and taking him to the line with intention. But after that, though, 3 of 6, 5 of 7, had a bad night against New York, didn't shoot against LA at all at the line. So February's been a good one for him. And it matters because when you think about him being the only guy that's operating in that true 5 right now, and now Daron Sharp, who also has some issues at the line potentially to look out for, they're going to get into some of those concerns. And if this is a team that is going to be competitive and is going to cause problems for teams when they see them, yes, late game sequences when they're close, they're going to go ahead and put those guys on the line. They need to be able to punish them in that fashion. Do you think the Nets will make the playoffs? Yes, they will. We kind of said this already. Like, they're not going to, they've given themselves, they have a big enough cushion when we talk about where they are in the standings right now. And guess what? Today's win matters in that vein, because the Chicago Bulls are sitting in the 9th seed and the Nets are sitting in the 5th seed. So they just improved to 33-22. When you talk about going all the way down to the final play-in spot, the Toronto Raptors, 26-30 right now. Now, they made the move for Pirtle. They may make a buyout market move as well. But the bottom line being is, in the loss column, you're sitting 8 games up on the last playoff spot, and you've got 28, 27 games to play here. There's a significant amount of work that you have to do to overcome that, right? So what is it, 56 games right now for Toronto. They're going to have another 26 games to play on their schedule. They got to get themselves to what? If they get them, I mean, think about it. If they get themselves to 45 wins, well, that means they got to get themselves 19 wins over the next 26 games. So they have a lot of lift to do to get to that point. And for the Brooklyn Nets, when you're sitting at 33, well, we just got to get 11, 12 wins to get ourselves into the mid-40s here. So playing 500 ball is going to keep them in the playoffs, obviously. And then we can think about what it's going to look like when we talk about Miami, New York, Atlanta. These are all muddled teams that are out there for them. And again, they're right behind us when we talk about the standings. So a quick look, and then I'll get back into comments and questions if you guys are firing them off. I'm feeling the vibes, guys. And I was getting fueled over on Twitter because there's some really great fans that are over there. I'm going to try to work something up for YouTube as well. I'll break that down for you here in a second, because we're having some fun with the fan base going forward as well. So Philly coming up, obviously, that's a whole other beast. But then you're going to get the Knicks, you're going to get Miami, you're going to get Chicago, you're going to get Atlanta. Those are 4 games against 4 teams that are behind you in the standings. Do I think you're going to win all of them? Of course not. But this sample size, and then seeing Bridges and Johnson on Saturday night, you can start to say, we can go toe-to-toe and take a win off of a team here and a team there. So over these next 10 games that are all against Eastern Conference opponents, I'm not going to hold out hope for Philadelphia, for Milwaukee, for Boston, right? And certainly you could, pull off another one in here that's going to be a difficult game. But you can get that win against Charlotte when they come up, right? You can get the win over the Rockets when that comes up. So there are going to be winnable games out there on the schedule for the Brooklyn Nets. We are going to see them hit a very difficult run here in March, just to look ahead a little bit. Back-to-back against Cleveland at home, but then you're going to get Miami. You get a little bit of a layoff there with Orlando, the Rockets, and then you'll get into, it's not that bad, really. You get the Jazz, you get Detroit, you get Orlando, man. I'm going to tell you right now, I know nobody cares about this kind of stuff, but this is what I get sucked into. Reverse engineering from the end of the schedule. Orlando, Detroit, give me Houston, give me Orlando again. Give me a game off of maybe Sacramento or one other team there. Let's keep ourselves at 4, though. Give me Houston, that's 5. Charlotte, 6. Give me a game or 2 here. Like, I can massage my way to 7 wins just looking across the schedule. And then you got to find ways to get some other ones in there. But there's 7 or 8 very winnable games just based on talent alone and the opposition. So this team's going to be in a good spot. By the way, if they only won 8 more games along here and you go back and you look at the standings, that's still going to make them a 41, 42 win team. It's going to be hard for them to fall out of all of those possible positions they're in behind them. All right, back into the comments, man. Let's get in some other people here, like Richard. Eric B., I see you right up there. Don't worry. Actually, I'm going to do what Doug did last time. He started doing this, where when I see the shout-outs, I can go ahead and star that up so I don't miss out on it. Richard, the Nets during the summer, would you go out and sign a power forward, maybe John Collins? I don't care about John Collins. I just don't think that it is not viable. He had the finger issue. We talked about this. I've been a fan of John Collins. I like him more when you have a superstar team built. You have the right supporting cast in there. I don't need a guy that I think is only shooting 25% right now from beyond the arc. He had the finger injury. It's messed him up. He still has a lot on his contract as well. Wood is a nice player. I like the fact that he can shoot from the outside. Obviously, as a big, he's not a defensive player, but you can dream on the fact that you have a lot of defensive-minded guys. Man, that's so far away from me. It's not a bad question, but it's so far away from me right now. I still want to see Bridges. I still want to see Johnson. I still want to see what this team is made of right now. Then we got Eric B. Do you think the Nets go after someone from the buyout market? Well, they have one roster spot open, and I think we can take a look at let's take a look at buyout market list here. There's not a ton of bigger guys. Nerlens Noel is one of them that's out there. I'm only just mentioning him because I had just seen him listed there when I was going over this list previously. So like guys that are going to go, Westbrook, Ibaka, Reggie Jackson, John Wall, Will Barton. I can't remember where he was getting some traction. Those are some of the top names that are being talked about right now. Yes, I think they'll go do something, but I just don't know. I don't know what that's going to be, because I think you want to construct a roster that doesn't prevent, say, a Day'Ron Sharpe from getting run, right? You want him to be able to develop over these last 27 games, and, playing 25 minutes a night, that matters to young guys that you want to develop. And then the hierarchy, the veteran guys that you like here, that you want to see. How cohesive can a Dinwiddie, Bridges, Johnson, and Thomas and Claxton lineup be? Is that something we can start to dream on? And then what does our roster look like from a bench standpoint? Where does Ben Simmons come into this thing? So there's a lot of stuff you want to evaluate. Wesley Stone sounds like a weatherman. Wesley Stone telling you about a cold front. Is it fair to put Ben at center with all our worst defensive players? Yeah. Is it fair? Yes. It's funny. I don't know though, like his best value, like even in that instance, your best value is still going to be probably on another matchup, because he is so versatile defensively. Like this is where it's tricky, because him and Day'Ron, they don't shoot. Claxton doesn't shoot, right? So the pairings are rough there, but you want to pair him with a more traditional five, or a guy that can go after the five on the other team, and then afford Ben Simmons to say, yeah, I can play it. I can play it to the four. I can also switch down. I know that I can go down to the guards, right? So I don't know how you would want to approach that specifically, and they did it tonight, where they surrounded him with as many perimeter shooters as possible. When you go back and think about it, like think about the bench unit tonight. That was a unit constructed of Patty Mills. Now, Yuta Watanabe, he's decent, but he's not, an elite defender by any stretch of the imagination. Joe Harris. So at one point, when you had that stretch going on there, those are guys that can't defend, and it's Ben Simmons. Now, I think that's a product for the offensive end, and then you'll live with some of the results defensively and some of those shortcomings. So, and no Sumner tonight. Don't know if there's anything listed about an injury there for him. Could have just been a night off. So there's some things like that. And then again, when you get Johnson, you get Bridges in the mix here, I really, they're going to be able to afford themselves an opportunity to have a really nice balance throughout this roster. I did not talk about Dorian Finney-Smith. Let me try to back that one up here real quick. Because I said this early, he had a very kind of like, this was like a quietly consistent game from him, which is, I think, what you expect from Dorian Finney-Smith. Like, it's not going to be a lot of flashy work that he gives you. 35 minutes, 4 of 10. Now, he was terrible from the outside, 0 of 4. Got to the line 3 times, only knocked down 1. So there's some things you like to see him clean up. Just 9 points. But 9 rebounds, 6 defensive rebounds, that matters. Like, that's where I think if we're talking about value for the players that are being brought in here, he was a plus 32 when he was on the floor tonight, as were several of those key starters. Only Royce O'Neal was in the minus for the starting unit, and then Watanabe was the player who was out there in closing minutes, knocking down big shots. He's plus 9. But Dorian Finney-Smith is a guy that I think you can really like. 6'7" with a 220, but he's big. He's got the wingspan. So I like having him for cleaning up some of the boards there. Certainly offensively, he's not a high-end athlete, but he's a step beyond Royce O'Neal in terms of being able to take the basketball, turn, get downhill going towards the basket and finish at the rim. That's the element that he has to him. And then you have Royce O'Neal, who you think is going to lean into and can do more perimeter shooting. And then obviously they both have their defensive assignments. By the way, it's really good to have these guys now. When we talk about Royce O'Neal getting overexposed on certain defensive matchups, roll these guys into the mix. Now, all of a sudden, you can mitigate guys getting caught. There's always going to be switches, but mitigate having to play up with consistency defensive assignments. Now guys get to stay at home more, and you get to dictate some terms. I mean, they were very good for long stretches on the defensive end of this game. That really got me excited. Let's hit up just one more here from you. Bridges, Claxton should start. Yeah. I'm trying to I'm run the names through my head. I don't know what's going to happen with Simmons here. Like, again, this could be Jacques Vaughn making a calculated decision of, let's take the pressure off of you and then slowly build you back up. Saturday, there's Bridges, there's Johnson. How does that look, right? So then you have Spencer Dinwiddie, who has the traditional point guard skill set in him. So you're not losing anything on the offensive end, having a facilitator with the ball in his hand, and you can bring along Ben. But that can be the ultimate goal at the end of the day. Yeah, I don't think, listen, he's not a superstar, shouldn't have the ball, and everybody else clear out all game. That really wasn't the case all game. Late sequences, fourth quarter, he was getting caught up in ISO. He just needs to clean it up. He needs to stay. We saw this in the Phoenix game towards the back end of it. Late game, he defaults to hero ball, right? And that's what, not just superstars, but that's what shooters do. They want to get their shots up, right? You want them to have that confidence. Now, without superstars on this team, you want everyone to stay at home. You want them to buy into the system, trust the play calls, and go ahead and execute. And by the way, he'll be the beneficiary of it. I think there's plenty of instances in this game where what needs to get back to is the opportunities where he's off ball sometimes, and he has to learn that. That's something he needs to learn, is being off ball and finding a way to create space for yourself, put yourself in a position where some of the things we talked about, spot up perimeter shooting. He needs to have that in his game if he's going to be able to play at a high level and then still be productive, even when other players have the ball in their hands, and to avoid getting it in his own hands and then slowing down the offense and stagnating. So again, all learning stuff, not a problem. Let's get in here. Cam Johnson shooting 46%. Curry, Mills, and are maybe expendable. We have Harris, Johnson, and Watanabe. Yeah, listen, I do think we all know, and everyone's talking about it. Frustrated. Doug frustrated about Curry still being on this roster at the deadline. Injury maybe played a factor. And then Patty Mills, veteran presence. We love him. He's the mascot. And that's what you want him to be, right? And he can come in for a handful of minutes here and there. But I agree with you. Like Cam Johnson's perimeter shooting, I like that hierarchy. We've been rough of late on Joe Harris, but again, very interested to see what happens here if he gets back to his pure role, spot up perimeter shooter with no other expectations on the offensive end. That can maybe get him back to home. Don't want to get over our skis on one game, but it certainly looked nice. Looked like he was playing with a little bit of a sense of relief for himself as well. Oh, guys, shout it out here. I'm not going to stay too much longer. We ran a half hour. It wasn't structured in any way, shape, or form, and I'm okay with that. This was just a really good game. Let's see what we got here. I want to try to get up to some other people. There you are, Dwayne Green. You've been in here a few times recently as well. Appreciate you. We can start our 4 new guys and Claxton. That squad would be Lockdown City. I like that. I like that verbiage. Yeah, and that is why I kind of default to it. Again, the Ben thing being isolated, where you want to treat that separately as what you're trying to figure out. But I can very easily look and say, what? Spencer, Bridges, Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Claxton. I think there's some flexibility at that point with how good you are defensively in those lineups. You're going to want to flex somebody into the second unit and say, whether it's Dorian Finney-Smith, you can then be a defensive anchor as well into that second unit. So there's going to be some balance there. But closing lineups, right? That lineup right there is going to give you enough ball handling. It's going to give you a lot of perimeter shooting. It's going to give you great defensive ability. So there's some nice opportunities here, obviously, for this team. Here's another new friend back in. Oh, Richard, you might have come up earlier too. But I've been doing so many of these. Thoughts on Zach LaVine? I think he is very overrated. Yeah, I mean, there have been things about that and about Chicago and what's gone on there. I mean, listen, he's a pain in the butt to guard. We all know that, right? I mean, you saw how he was blown by some defensive assignments with relative ease. He's a talent. I don't know if he's a guy like now in this iteration of the team that you want to add into that kind of mix, if that's what you're asking about. Yeah, there's things that I really like about his game. I like guys that have length and can be on the ball and can be creative and take dudes off the dribble. Like that kind of matters, and you want to have more of that. Where does Sumner fit in? Yeah, so he wasn't playing tonight, obviously, either. So this is why I said about that other lineup that got thrown out there. If we go back in here and just look at the depth chart now, So you can say, let's just say Dinwiddie, Thomas, Bridges, Finney-Smith, and Claxton. That's the way the generic depth chart lines it up here, right? Now, Cam Johnson will be coming off the bench, but there's real value there. If you look inside the second unit, that's where I think, and these things bleed over. We know that, right? But Edmund Sumner in that second unit can certainly make a lot of sense for you here. So if you talk about let's think about the backcourt, right? I can go with Dinwiddie, Thomas, Ben Simmons, obviously Edmund Sumner. I can play those four guys there. I'd rather now get Joe Harris out of being anywhere near the backcourt assignments and play him at the 3 and keep him away from those switching assignments at times. You're at far more risk of that if you're lining up in a backcourt position. So now you're talking about having those four guys in the backcourt. Curry is on this roster. We know he exists, but maybe you push him back a little bit there. You also now get to maybe think about saying, hey, Royce, who's been playing backcourt as well. But now when you get up into the 3 spot, it's Bridges, Johnson, Royce O'Neal with flexibility to push Bridges up to the 4 and to have, obviously, Royce O'Neal from a defensive perspective push up onto those assignments too, right? So flexibility up from 3 to 4. At the 4, Dorian Finney-Smith. Ben Simmons is in that mix from point forward, so his role doubles up there, obviously, as well. Royce O'Neal can play into it. So you're probably looking at like Bridges playing up sometimes, Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce, Ben mixing in there. So you have, and then one guy I'm leaving out here is Yuta Watanabe. And he's not going to play the 4, but you can mix him in at that 3-4, certainly. But he'll be in that 3 group. Maybe more around like Johnson, Harris, Watanabe, making my 3-ish kind of rotation coming in. Because you're only, so Sumner, Royce, Joe, Yuta. 4-man rotation coming in off the bench there, like that secondary wave. And then you've got Dinwiddie, Thomas, Bridges, and Thomas can shuffle down. Like he can shuffle out of this, but I'm just listing these guys in the way I'm seeing them. So those are your 4 back. And then you have Dinwiddie, Thomas, Bridges, Finney-Smith, Claxton, 9. And then what? Just add in 10 would be Royce O'Neal. Yeah. So, I mean, they're going to be deep, though. They're going to play deep here. I'm doing real-time reading of lineups. I'm sure that's the most tantalizing way to approach this. Hey, blah. Are we like a better Orlando Magic, meaning we could give the Celtics a problem? Well, let's not get totally over our skis on it just yet. Let's see what happens with everything. Again, I like what they could be defensively. I think, and you saw in stretches for this game, what's going to happen if you run cold from the perimeter, right? What's going to happen if Cam Thomas is getting bottled up on the, defensively, or if Spencer Dinwiddie is having an off night, because they still do lack some level of ball handling. But I am curious, and Chicago's a weird team because they haven't remotely played up to expectations this season. But we're going to get some looks here, and there's going to be ugly ones. Let's be 100% honest here, right? Because we've gone all positive vibes all the way through. There's going to be some ugly ones here. Philadelphia is going to be, one to watch. But then New York, Miami, those are good ones back at Chicago, right? And then you'll get Milwaukee at the end of February. So there'll be some good opportunities. Then 2 games later in March, you will get the Celtics. So we'll see. We'll get these sample sizes. Let's not get totally out over it here, but let's be excited about the fact that this is a game, first of all, they won. And second of all, that they put out an energy that suggests this team is ready to buy in and be committed. You had Bridges and Johnson there watching. Bridges was interviewed. He was blindsided by being traded. There was like kind of a not on him. There was just like a bit of a malaise around what was going on. And as this thing progressed, they were there. They were there cheering everybody on. They were bought into those vibes. And this is the stuff that, Doug rightfully would say, I don't know if it really matters. It's about whether or not you play well and win games, but it's kind of nice when you aren't playing yet for the team you've been traded to and you see them go out and win a game that they have no business winning. The Nets have done this before, right? They've done this before when the stars were out before the trade deadline. They go out and win a game you don't think on paper they should be winning. And now all of a sudden, here we are winning a game like this and at least starting to say, hey, we can have some fun here moving forward. Al Mac, I do see your comment there. I'm not ignoring it, but I'm trying to do the best version of this after the deadline of saying, hey, the deals are done or not done, and this is the team that we have, right? So I want to be able to move forward on that. I know that there were deals done that certainly we thought they could have sniffed around for sure. Last looks for anybody. You want to get on the conversation? Thanks, man. Over 300 people in here right now. Really appreciate it. We always tell you, go over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, turn on those darn alerts, because at that point, you can have a real opportunity to get in on these kind of conversations. Traditionally, we do the full episode, shut that thing down, then come in here and chop it up with all you guys. We really, man, there were some people, as King will tell you, there were some people. It's free of charge to hit that subscribe button, that like button, that turn on the alert button, go subscribe to the podcast feed. It's all free, and it really does mean a ton to us. There have been some fans, man, that came in after the Kyrie trade and said, hey, I was here for Kyrie. I'm off to Dallas. There's guys that came in even more so. Hey, Kevin Durant was the only reason I was watching Brooklyn anyway. I'm off to Phoenix. And we bid them a fond farewell and wish them nothing but the best. But we want to be as we've always been. But I think you're going to hear from me leaning into what is the core of who I was when I started this podcast and before it, going back to being a kid and watching this team in Jersey. Like, this is where I'm at. This is who I've always been as a fan of this team. And I've really been excited around seeing some of that diehard energy come back up here. And that's really awesome. So I really appreciate you guys coming in and showing up in that big way, including Gerard. Nah, bro. Awesome. Greetings from New Zealand. I didn't know you were from New Zealand. I did not know that you were out there in New Zealand. Awesome. That's awesome. I always love like people from Australia, New Zealand, like anyone that's coming from another area of the world completely. I always love the fact that you're tapped in and you love watching the Nets and that you're supporting and engaging with us. That's inappropriate. How dare you? How dare you ask me to stay on for another hour? No, I cannot do that, friends. I was up. I know if you're here for the trade deadline stuff, I was trying to go to bed this 1 a.m. this morning, got caught in the Kevin Durant trade, did that thing, had my other stuff that I do for the network. That ate up a bunch of my schedule. Did not get more than an hour and a half of sleep today. And frankly, this is like fumes, and it's just all vibes. I'm running on Brooklyn Nets vibes right now. And this thing is eventually going to crash. This vessel is going to give out here. So let's hit up a couple more here. Became a Nets fan when they moved to New Jersey. That's before KD and Kyrie was even born, not going anywhere. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, man. Back to the old ABA days even. I'll throw up a green here again. DFS O'Neal, Johnson, Bridges, Simmons, Claxton. Which one would you say is the worst out of the 6 defenders? That's a good one. I'm going to say, I don't want to like overstate it with Johnson. I had to go watch him like a bit, like really, really watch him to see. I don't know why I like part of me would say O'Neal out of the 6, if I'm being honest. But some of that does feel like a guy that's been a little bit overexposed because he's had to do more, had to play more than the initial role was expected. So, and again, Johnson is the guy that I want to keep an eye on. And then just go look at him. It doesn't mean it's bad, right? It just means where does he fit in the hierarchy? So, again, let's tie the bow on it. I think that, hold on. Yeah, that's right. Keith Van Horn, Kendall Gill, baby. Let's dial it back, right? And then bring it forward with Kerry Kittles. Good old days, man. Keith Van Horn with those freaking shin-high socks of his. What a mess. Imagine some guys. Let's have a little sidebar for some fun. Imagine, like, the Keith Van Horn in my mind existing right now in the NBA would look like, I just don't think that dude could function. And he was an NBA player. But in my mind now, he reminds me, like, it just feels like this dude. I can't think of what that is. Like, it's like the robot. I don't know. It'd be a mess. It's just weird. I'm going down a whole thing. Kenny, that's right. There we go. Throw him out, man. Let's bring back some of those vibes. Let's bring back some of those throwback vibes. That's what we want it to be. Last one here. I just saw this one that had a ton of questions and exclamation points. I want to see Cam Johnson. Is he better than Watanabe and Harris? Yeah, as far as a two-way player, Johnson is the guy you're going to want to see. He's been shooting really well. Obviously, this season, very small sample size on him. Came back from injury, had to wait a while to get there. So you have to wait until you get, just continue to see how it develops. I want to pull up I'll give you the exact numbers on him, although they may not. They won't have them listed yet here, so we'll get it though. Yeah. And frankly, it's like, it's funny. Like, Yuta has his limitations, but then he shows up in a game like this with those, with those clutch shots, and you keep getting reminded this is a guy that's played, that really has just stepped up in a big way. And it's again why I say a guy like Harris, who has no defensive value, his value is in his perimeter shooting. But if he can be just that, then that's all he is. But then other guys that do other things that can be two-way players, then you start having those conversations. Yes, good to throw that name in there as well. RIP. I mean, for crying out loud, what could have been, right? Unfortunately, when it comes to Petrovic. But yeah, so it's going to be fascinating to see the games, the sample size. We're going to, learn, refine, but it is worth noting that we talk about these additional two players that they're going to bring in. They also represent, they're going to represent size for this team too, right? So Bridges, when he walks in the door, it's 6'6", but you can play him there. And that's what, before I think I was playing him up when I meant playing him down. So this is what's, man, I've been up all night. This is something that people were suggesting too. Maybe Doug brought this up, is playing him down, not playing him up. I was saying it the wrong way before, playing him down. So a lineup that consists of Dinwiddie, Bridges, and then you talk about having a, Cam Johnson, a Dorian Finney-Smith, a Nic Claxton, right? Something like that. And then you think, well, when Ben Simmons comes in, you add some size in that regard. So then you can take out and then maybe bring in a Joe Harris, who's a little bit undersized, plug him in at the 3, but you've picked up defensive size with Ben Simmons, whichever way you want to go with it. So got completely wrapped around in my own brain there earlier. So we'll continue to refine those. But that's a nice one, though, right? And you think about playing him down 6'6", that's more size and more athleticism than at times when we've played Joe Harris down with the same size, but not the same athleticism. Yeah, Pat ain't going anywhere, though, man. He'll be there. He'll be there on the bench waiting to get his number called for the 5-minute spot here and there. Listen, it's good. And by the way, like, take away everything that's gone on, and this is the roster, and all these players are here. It's always good to have veteran guys. Like, it's always good to have veteran players there. Who tore his ACL? Am I learning right now? Am I learning right now of an active injury here? Our biggest challenge as of now is the lack of experience in deep playoff series. Yeah, and again, if you look into this roster, this is what we talked about before. So Spencer Dinwiddie has playoff experience, not just from Brooklyn, but from Dallas as well. So he's got that. He's got that in him. Dorian Finney-Smith has that as well from the Mavericks. Royce O'Neal has that from Utah. Patty Mills has that from playing, obviously, for his entire career in the Spurs, etc. If these guys are going to be there, Seth Curry at least has playoff experience. You can, reference that. Joe Harris has playoff experience. Ben Simmons has playoff experience. Now, there's obviously faults and cracks inside of that. And even Bridges, Bridges and Johnson, they have playoff experience. Bridges certainly more so than Johnson, just in their roles they had with Phoenix. But yeah, it is there. But and again, let's not worry about what goes on when we get there. Let's just get there, right? Let's just be excited that we get to think about this team that has been able to have, been able to live through one of the worst moments in the franchise's history and come out the other side winning a basketball game. I'm going to take Ian's advice here because we are going to well, there you go. Listen, buddy. If the Nets turn around and beat the Sixers on Saturday night, I don't know where I go from here. I can only get so elated. I can only continue to really pump out these vibes for so long before I pass out. The one last thing I'll tell you here before we highlight this one, isn't it fitting that in this rebuild, Dinwiddie and Harris are on this team? Yeah, man. And Dinwiddie said it too. Like, he said coming back here, and he was referencing like he was here, underneath Marks and through Kenny Atkinson and under Steve Nash. And then guys that were here with LeVert. He said still talks with Jared Allen. And he mentioned Joe Harris as just being like one of the all-time good guys that he pulls for and wants to be successful. Like, yeah, like there is something kind of nostalgic about that too. Last thing I'll just mention quickly here. I did over on Twitter a rundown of predicting the record. And maybe what I'll do for the YouTube channel. So over on Twitter, I went ahead and asked everybody to put out their predictions for the final 28 games. So I ended up having a list, covered everything from 11 wins all the way up to 23. Some people are just going for the really good vibes, obviously, because they get taken. And we're going to give away some Brooklyn Nets, swag, maybe a sweatshirt, a hat, t-shirt, something. We're going to put something together here at the end of the year. So I'll do that again, if not after Saturday night's game, sometime early next week. We'll run it on the post podcast bonus on YouTube. We'll take you first come, first serve on whatever we choose. Might not be record. Could be who's going to be the leading scorer, something like that. But we'll put something out there. You guys can throw in your guesses. We'll knock them down. End of the year, we'll do a little bit of a, hey, man, thanks for sticking with not only the Brooklyn Nets, but for sticking with the Locked On Nets podcast. Everybody in here, absolutely amazing. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming in here and enjoying this action. Thank you for supporting the podcast. We'll be back again. We'll see about Saturday night. I'll be honest with you. I don't know where Doug's going to be. I don't know where I'm going to be on Saturday night, but we'll, of course, be watching those games. We'll be talking with you on social. Really appreciate it, guys. All the support. Get some rest. I'm going to get some rest. And we'll be back again next time talking all things Brooklyn Nets basketball.